Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Fazil Jacobs, for those who don't know, and I'm chairperson of the South African Society of Ostomates. For those who do not know who SASS is, we are a registered non-profit. For those who do not know who SASS is, sorry, I'm getting some feedback here. For those who do not know who SASS is, sorry, I'm getting some. Just give me one moment. Is that okay? It looks like the feedback's gone. So for those who don't know, SASS is a registered nonprofit, and our purpose is to educate and advocate for the rights of ostomates. An ostomate is somebody who has a stoma, which is an opening on the abdomen, and it is part of either your urinary tract or your wee functions that gets expelled out of the body via the abdomen now, or it is part of the digestive tract, which will expel poo out of your body into a pouching system. So the aim of this organization is to raise awareness around life with a stoma, and then also to advocate for a better quality of healthcare for ostomates across the country and across the African continent as well. But tonight we're very excited. It is the first of a virtual series on a new platform. We've historically done these meetings on Zoom. So we are, for the first time, we are doing this live. Currently we are running on Instagram, we are on Facebook, and we are running on YouTube as well. We've got a panel this evening, and before we get into the panel, I'd like to take a moment and to thank Convatec South Africa for sponsoring this evening's event. We're going to be looking at our constitutional rights as ostomates. What are our rights? And I think in particular, what happens to us and our rights after the surgery has happened. Thereafter, we're going to be having Ricardo Siljeur, who's a biokineticist, and he's going to be speaking about the benefits of functional fitness for ostomates and how it can benefit us. But I think the most important thing, we all know, there's two fears that an ostomate has. The first is that leak, especially the leak in public. And then the second fear is the dreaded hernia or prolapse. And we're going to be exploring how functional fitness can actually reduce the risk of that happening. We can never eliminate that risk because we are prone to this, but we can most certainly reduce the risk. We'll also be hearing from a few ostomates that's currently in the program that we are calling Ostomates on the Move. We'll hear about how they're finding it and the differences it's made to them before we hand over to Lebo from Convatec, who will be speaking to us and setting us up for our next meeting. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel this evening, and we're starting off with Kolo. Kolo is from Section 27. We then have Ricardo Siljeur, who is the biokineticist, as I mentioned. And then finally, we're going to be introducing Lebo from Convatec. Good evening, everybody, and welcome, and thank you for this historic first live of SASS.
Good evening. Thank you, Faisal.
So let's jump right in. I see the likes are growing, the viewership is growing there, so we don't want to have people waiting. I think we're going to hand over to Kolo first, who is going to be speaking to us. Kolo will do an introduction as to who she is, where she's from, and then our constitutional rights as ostomates for the healthcare that we deserve. Kolo, all over to you.
Thank you so much, Faisal. Hi to you and everyone that's watching and everyone that's going to watch. My name is Kolo Mphahlele, Kolo for short. I am an activist and paralegal at Section 27, where we work with the rights to access healthcare services and the right to basic education. The word Section 27, the name of the organization, is derived actually from the Constitution, which speaks to the right to health in Section 27 of the Constitution. So not to get into a whole dynamics of what we do or what we've done, but in a nutshell, if people have issues with accessing healthcare services, then we are on speed dial to help you access those healthcare services. Moreover, especially to Ostomates who usually do not have the right products or unable to get the right nurse or are just simply ignored on going to facilities. So I think let me just do my slide and then we'll take on any questions that come through. And while it's loading, I'll just say that the Section 27 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, everyone has a right to access healthcare services, including reproductive care, including emergency care. Now, the state must provide reasonable legislation and all other measures that it's available and there's available resources for everyone under this umbrella. So it doesn't speak to people that have got chronic diseases or people that are experiencing reproductive issues, but it speaks to everyone that needs healthcare services. It also speaks to the fact that there needs to be legislation needs to enable everyone to progressively realize this right, and that no one may be refused emergency medical treatment. So the meaning of, I like this definition from the World Health Organization of 1946. It actually says health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and is not merely the absence of disease. So if you are getting Ostomate physical care, you also need to have mental and social care so that you can be an overall well-being, so everything can work together, right? So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948 and the African Charter also speaks to the fact that people should not be denied medical healthcare services. So what does the National Health Act say? I think we've jumped this one. We can just go to the third one. Yeah, the third one. Thank you. So the National Health Act 61 of 2003, this is the one we heavily rely on in terms of accessing of services. So it speaks to the fact that there needs to be provision of system of cooperative governance. It speaks to there needs to be free healthcare services for qualifying patients. Now, let me just underline that part of qualifying patients. It doesn't mean that there is some tick box that you should be able to do. So what happens in a hospital is you need to be means tested. So it's either you're an emergency or you are chronic or you're an ongoing patient or you're an outpatient or inpatient. So the right to health is not like the right to education where it's free, it has no qualification. In terms of right to health, you need to qualify. You need to fall into some kind of category so that you get the right care. I think I'll take questions just after. Let me just finish these ones. So the Health Act also speaks to there needs to be regulation of private sector services. It's just private sector cannot go nilly-willy. They also have their own code of conduct and the patient charter to adhere to. It also speaks to the fact that there's an Office of the Health Standards Compliance, which needs to ensure that service delivery is adhered to. So my first encounter with an ostomate was a gentleman who had said that he's not getting enough pouches at the hospital. When he goes to the hospital, he feels that the nurses aren't taking care of him in terms of gloves. They're just checking him. He's not sure when last they washed his hands. There was a problem with the quality. He had reported this to the facility manager, but nothing had been done. He then reported it to the Office of the Health Standards of South Africa, and they then issued an investigation. So it's important to also hold facilities to account to say that even if you're not, it's not about the pouches only, but even the standard of care received should be of high quality. You can't hold someone without, for instance, sanitizing first, without gloves, without simple care. So it's a whole holistic view. It's a whole holistic service. It's not just about here's your pouches, go. And if an individual needs psychological or social assistance, it is up to facility to also do or also engage the patient with those as well. So there also needs to be norms and standards for health system and carry out inspections to assess compliance. I know this is something that's not being done actively, especially for ostomates in the clinic, and which is something that needs to be looked into, especially with the Office of the Health Standards, because there needs to be a standard of care for every patient. It's not just about the chronic patients, but all patients. And there needs to be investigate complaints relating to breaches of these norms. So where the patient charter has been breached in terms of you feel that I wasn't treated well, I wasn't given respect, that needs to be investigated. It's not just that it's your emotional well-being, it's just as important as a physical well-being for a patient. So some hurdles now on what is between what the legislation says and what is happening on the ground. So some hurdles are we need to recognize that perfection can't be immediate. Ostomate rights are also human rights, but this is something that won't happen tomorrow, or this is something that just won't get immediate attention. But we need to work towards it where there's no regression, but there's actually progression in how ostomates are treated, what products they receive, is a psychological support, is a social support. So policies that come into a hospital should not discriminate against any group of patients, right? Everyone should be able to access health. So just because someone is not working does not mean that they cannot access those services. They need to be means tested and put on, for example, H0, which means this patient is not working, that can only afford to pay 50 Rand when they come into the hospital. Within available resources, it is up to national government and also provincial government, where it trickles down to also district level, to make sure that resources are available. They also have a duty to make sure that the right to health is realized. And if not realized, it is upon the patient's duty to report this to organizations like SASS or Section 27 to say that we are not realizing our rights as per Constitution. We realize that there's issues of underspending, budget cuts, austerity measures, and the gender response is not as we'd want it to be. But even with all those said, there is room for improvement. There is funding for improvement. And that's where we need to hit the nail on the head when we're talking or when we advocate for ostomate rights being human rights. You need to see me as a human. You need to treat me as a human. You need to treat me with dignity, integrity, and care. So the rationing is the right to health can't mean that everyone gets everything all the time, but it simply means that a means test needs to be done for every patient. So I can't speak to when a patient is at this level of an ostomate, they're more emergency than the other one. I don't lie. I work with legal framework. I don't work with. I'm not a doctor as such. I'm not a doctor at all. But obviously, there's emergencies, and emergencies means that those need to be prioritized. So obviously, that means you go to the top of the ladder and not at the bottom. So there needs to be means done. Just to give an example of when we say that not everyone can get everything at the very same time, there's a case. It's almost 20 years back, if not 30 years back, of 1997. Sombronomi versus Minister of Health in KwaZulu-Natal, where he wanted chronic treatment, where he wanted a kidney, and he lodged it as an emergency treatment. Although you need dialysis and eventually you need a kidney, right now it's not an emergency medical treatment. But we recognize that with ostomates, there's not even a measure that is happening. There's no measure that's happening. There's not even a progression or a budget set out for ostomates. When listening to the budget speech last week by the Minister of Finance, Ino Kotongwane, I did not hear that in health there is a specific budget for ostomates. It was just a holistic budget. But diseases like chronic diseases, diseases like where there's chronic disease, where there is pediatrics, those are always accounted for, but ostomates are not. And that's the first place to start. If there's no budget for it, then how will it be accounted for? Or where will they say they'll get the money to buy the right pouches for all the patients? Also, data is a problem. There's no specific data that speaks to how many ostomates are there in this country, which is something that needs to be looked into both by the department and also Stats SA. I think I'll leave it there for now, and we'll get to any questions, clarities that need to be done. Thanks, Faisal.
Faisal, sorry, I think you're on mute there.
Apologies for that. Thanks, Ricardo. We got a couple of questions that came through. The first one is from Tafadzwa. Tafadzwa, I hope I pronounced your name correct. But the question is, how do I identify emergency medical treatment?
Okay, so the obvious case in point is if somebody comes in with an ambulance at the emergency unit, that is an emergency. That would be the first, typical example that we know. But case in point, if an Ostomate's pouch is leaking, that is an emergency because it speaks to their dignity, their integrity. It also speaks to a whole patient care. So now they can get infections. There's a whole list of things that can happen that counts as emergency care. So if you're a patient at a certain facility and suddenly something happens with your pouches, something happens post-operation, you are entitled to medical services. It doesn't stop at we've given you pouches, we have done the stoma, so thank you so much, go on your merry way. Every time you experience issues because of your stoma, you need to be able to go to a facility, and that counts as medical treatment. Emergency is also subjective to who's at the desk, unfortunately.
True that. But thank you. And Tafadzwa, I hope that answered your question. The next one we have is from Brendan Gass. And why do we need a script every time our bags change? Sorry, that's from Erika Gass. I think I'll answer that one, Kolo. And Lebo, perhaps you could also come in on here. You've got a lot more experience as well in the public sector. But Erika, you have to realize that our pouching systems is something that is supposed to be prescribed to us. An example that I like to use is spectacles. Now, Kolo and I both wear spectacles. And the function of our spectacles is to allow us to see better. But Kolo and I cannot interchange our specs. You have a different prescription when it comes to the lenses. The function of the specs is to help us see better, but we still cannot interchange. And the same applies to pouching systems. Convatec is a good brand, but so too is Coloplast, so too is Hollister and Salts that's now in the country, Ample Resources, etc. They are all good. It is based on what your requirements are. And as our body changes, we pick up weight, we lose weight, you get a couple of extra rolls, you need to change from a flat pouch to a convex pouch or vice versa. The same way you go to have your eyes retested every so often, the same way your script has to be redone every so often. And that's dependent on the type of stoma that you have, which is the frequency in terms of how often they will rescript you. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Lebo?
Hi, to the question, Faisal covered most of it, but again, remember in the private sector, we need what we call NEPI codes. So for the funder to be able to pay for your bags, you need to have the script. So you cannot just chop and change without a prescription from the doctor. Equally, for the public sector, you need a prescription, and it makes it easier for you when you go back to the hospital. They have the prescription on your file, so it makes it easier, even if you find somebody else in the public hospitals, to be able to give you what you need and to order what you need. So if they don't have the scripts, they won't know what to order.
Thank you. Erika, I hope that answers your question. And I think there's one more question I'd like to pose to you, Kolo. You made mention about statistics, and I agree with you. Nobody knows how many ostomates there are in the country, and it's I think this is where and please your input on this. This is where we need the support of the ostomates. When SASS is doing their surveys, the data we capture there helps us determine how many ostomates there are in the country. if I can put it into context, our organization is almost 4 years old. And within the first couple of months of having registered and formed SASS and speaking with the supplier community and nurses, we asked the question, we kept asking the question, how many Ostomates are there in the country? And we were given a figure of approximately 60,000 Ostomates. And I've always said that number isn't right. And why it's not right, it just doesn't make sense, because the number they said was based on the amount of product that was distributed. Now, I'm in the private sector. The type of pouching system that I use is a closed pouch. So that means I change twice a day. So that's on average 60 pouches for the month. But Heather, who's watching at the moment, she's in the state sector, and she gets 5 pouches for the month, or 10 pouches if she's lucky. So, you cannot get an accurate average. We then learned that in 2019, Discovery Health alone had 44,500 Ostomates on their books. So again, that number of 60,000 doesn't make sense. But we cannot advocate for a better quality of care. We cannot advocate that Ostomates need to get more pouches, because the number is based on an assumption right now that nobody's recording. So in order to advocate better, we need to get a registry going, which forms part of these surveys. Are we on the right track with
that? I think your survey one might be actually more accurate than the public sector one, or even gathering data from private medical aids or private medical health insurances. Those would actually be more accurate. I want to sell it to you. No, we have to speak to the right people. But with regards to data, it's a real problem to get the right numbers. And it's always a call to say, if there is a problem, can you please say something? Because the one day that I went to a public facility with the patient that was not getting any bags at all, and he's 60 years old, the line was snaking. And it wasn't just a few of us. All of us are only going to get 2 bags today. And I wondered, if all these people are getting 2 bags today, then tomorrow there's another snake line that's coming for another 2. So how many people are actually Ostomates? It's a real challenge, and I think it's something that should be collected actively, the same way that HIV was quite a big thing, and then all of a sudden there's enough data on HIV and AIDS. There's no way, it's not even an estimate. You can find exact numbers. I think the same needs to be done for Ostomates. I think Status A needs to be called to say, how do you collect this data? We need this kind of data, whether it's a PAJ application or what kind of application it is, but they need to lead in the right direction.
Sure. Thank you. We've got 2 more questions, and we're going to cover that very quickly because we are also running out of time. We need to hand over to our next speaker. But I'm going to touch on 2 of them. One, Tafadzwa again, she said, how come stoma services differ per province? For example, suppliers given to patients differ. Supplies given to patients differ between KZN, best, better, and Gauteng, worse. I think that is part of the problem that we have, Tafadzwa, is the fact that we also don't know how many Ostomates there are. We also sit with the problem that there is no minimum standard, and none has been set. And this is something that we as SASS is trying to advocate for. So, it's as Kolo mentioned, it's not something that's going to get fixed overnight. It's a long fight ahead. What we do need from you watching, is when you're not getting the service that you're receiving, you need to complain. And I know the risk is you get victimized, and you're going to feel it. But if that happens, reach out to SASS or reach out to Section 27. We can escalate it further. But the more complaints we get, the louder our voice becomes, the more we can start driving the much needed change. The rest of the questions that came through, we are going to keep note of it. and we will post updates to those via our social networks. But for now, Kolo, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the information. I hope that our viewers out there found it useful. But right now, we have to hand over to our new speaker, or our next speaker, sorry, Ricardo Siljeur. Ricardo is a biokineticist, and he is working with SASS on a program that we call Ostomate on the Move, which is centered around functional fitness. It is based on Convatec's Me Recovery program, a program that was actually developed by an Ostomate, who's an exercise specialist, Sarah Russell, based in the UK. And we kind of put a South African twist on what it is we are doing here. And yeah, if Ricardo is quick enough, we've got a couple of the Ostomates sitting backstage. We'll also give some input in terms of how they found the day. But for now, Ricardo, welcome. Yeah. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Faisal. Yeah, good evening to everyone out there. Yeah, I mean, I think tonight and this evening, my main objective is really just to maybe debunk a couple of things that is out there in the world around functional fitness and functional training, and especially to a community like Ostomate, and really talk about the fears around training and why is it actually important to train. Yeah, and so I'm a biokineticist or exercise physiologist known in other parts of the world. Been doing this for the past 18 years. And Faisal was my first client that walked through the door about 4 years ago. And so it's been a fun journey, an exciting journey, but nevertheless, we're here today and I'm glad to be part of this community. So we can just put on the slide. Yeah, I'll just put on the slide quickly. There we go. So yeah, so we will chat a little bit about functional fitness for Ostomates. And so next slide would be, what is functional fitness? That's the question that I, pose to everyone out there. And of course, if you had to Google functional fitness, to be honest, this is the picture you'll see. And if you looking at the picture, you're thinking, my gosh, if that is what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm rather going to avoid this. And so the biggest myth around functional fitness or functional training is that it's lifting all these different kind of weights, doing all these hardcore exercises, and that's one, of course, many people, they look at it for losing weight or gaining strength. However, so next slide. And so, of course, when you look at functional fitness and you look at that picture, the first concern one would think about is the peristomal hernia. And I'm not going to do any of these exercises because the fear of actually having a hernia. And so what's very, very important to understand, and just from the picture on the top left over there, is that the pink is your muscle, all right, the abdominal muscle wall. And because there's already an insertion inside that muscle wall has already been weakened. And so if you do not actually train that muscle or actually reconnect that muscle in the sense of strengthening it, that muscle will stay weak, and your chance of actually having a hernia by doing a simple exercise like picking up a child, coughing, sneezing, could actually bring about the hernia. And so training is vital. Training is important for Ostomates. It's important to reconnect with that muscle, with the core muscle. And next slide, and we'll chat a little bit about how this works. So the first thing is that the concept of functional fitness is actually to teach you how to handle your body weight. We as human beings are not designed to sit down. All right, we are designed to move. And so functional means movement. All right, you have to move. And so functional fitness or functional training actually is how to teach you to handle your body weight. And it intentionally incorporates balance and proprioception. That's two important factors within any movement: is can you balance and do you understand where your body is in space. Then it involves simple versions of squatting, bending, lunging, pushing, and pulling. And that's kind of everything that the body likes to do. And of course, we look at it in different planes. And so at the end of the day, the end product of functional fitness is having the capacity to perform everyday activities safely and independently without fatigue. And so those four pictures over there represents basic daily activities. Pushing a shopping cart. If you don't know, if you loaded a full shopping cart, because of the wheels, it allows you to push nicely. All right. But that shopping cart could weigh easily between 50 and I want to say close to about maybe 70 kilograms. But because you're pushing the shopping cart and the wheels allow you to push it nicely, but how many of you are pushing the shopping cart and you need to turn into the next aisle, all right, or pull brakes, and all of a sudden you have to grab onto that cart and you're trying to stop 70 kilograms from moving, all right? And that is a risk. That's the risk we're talking about. But that is basic activity. Hanging up the washing as well, a very basic thing. But carrying a wet blanket weighs almost double its weight. And so these are all basic activities that could cause hernias, but this is the things that we need to be able to do. And so, and simple functional things like playing with the babies, playing with the grandkids, playing with your own kids, lifting, pushing, pulling, those are all basic daily activities that everyone should be able to do. And ostomates are supposed to be able to do as well. Next slide. And so before we really get into it, there is certain muscles that we do really need to understand quickly. That's important to prevent hernias, and very basic and simple. The first one is your deep abdominals, which is on the picture on the left. You'll see it's called the multifidus, which is around the spine, the back of the spine. It is your transverse abdominis, which is the deep muscle of your core that connects like a belt from one side of the spine to the other. And then there's something called the pelvic floor, which is at the bottom over there. And so this deep abdominal muscle is what we need to really connect with. And the basic exercises is breathing. It is basic breathing exercises that can actually strengthen these deep abdominal muscles. But the main and functional objective is to stabilize that spine, as you could see. The next one is your hip adductor, so your bottom right muscle. As you can see, you'll see the first picture shows you where all the core muscles I spoke about. The second picture talks about the abductor and rotators. Once you stabilize your spine through your glutes and around your hips, that allows you to actually carry your top and bottom weight. All right, that's what the pelvic is all about, allowing you to push, to pull, to actually lift up things as all through your pelvis. So that's another important muscle that you need to actually focus on to help stabilize and therefore also prevent hernias. Then the next grouping is your scapular stabilizers. Those are the top right muscles, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but the main objective of that is to keep your upper body upright. So you don't have those rounded shoulders, you don't bend over, because once you bend over, you're actually putting more pressure onto your multifidus and your transverse abdominis, and therefore a sneeze could cause that hernia if that abdominal wall is not actually strong enough. And so these three parts of the muscles are of the body actually are very, very key and very, very important to one, just basic functional movement, but also very important to actually prevent hernias.
Sorry, Ricardo, before you go on, Ricardo, correct me if I'm wrong. All this that you just described right now is actually what your core is. It's not just the six pack on the front.
So it's just not that six pack that everyone sees, all right? And that's what everyone thinks that your core. Let me just do sit-ups. But these are what we call stabilizing muscles. These muscles' main job, Faisal, is to actually keep the spine upright. And so just through basic breathing, through basic simple exercises, you can strengthen these these muscles, and that alone could prevent a hernia. And so the goal of this, of course, is eventually to get that six pack. but it's to start with the deeper lining of the muscles. And next slide. And so I'm just going to give you a quick, and I mean, this is the patient pathway that is currently happening. All right. So there's a surgery that happens. All right. There's a little bit of loss of confidence and mistrust in the body, because all of a sudden you get told that you mustn't lift, you mustn't do anything. And so all of a sudden you're scared to do anything. Then it goes to inactivity, and then you loss of muscle mass, and this loss of function. Then there's the reduced quality of life, because all of a sudden you need help with a lot of things, and that of course further impacts in activity, and therefore more deconditioning. And then of course that is the weakness that happens within the abdominal wall, and any sort of movement, the risk of herniation is then, I think it's greater than 70%. And that is just because you were told not to move or be careful of movement. Next slide. I think the next, yeah. So the idea is to kind of create a new mindset. And the new mindset is, once the operation happens, the next thing is the intervention. And the intervention is actually reconnecting to your core, making sure that you actually start your prehab or rehab phase within the 6 weeks, but within the first 6 days, it is to start really reconnecting that core muscle, and that's through basic breathing exercises, and then that leads to confidence, because all of a sudden you can move better. If I take it from my experience with Faisal, it was movement was one of the biggest fears. And therefore, all of a sudden, once you get over that fear, of course, that's confidence. Once you get the confidence, you can do certain things. Of course, quality of life improves. Then there's a normal, we call normal return to life, in terms of the fact that you can do daily activities. And then all of a sudden, we talk about as a better quality of life. And so the intervention and the new mindset needs to happen early as possible. And as most commercials say, but there's more, it's not too late. It's not too late to start these exercises. It's not too late to reconnect with the core. If you didn't start early, it's just a matter of starting. And that's the kind of thing I want to advocate this evening, is that it's very important to start, so that the quality of life can improve later on. Next slide. And so what we started doing, we had a group, and we work into the group, and we, of course, doing all these different types of exercises to kind of progress him to get to, as we talk about, the quality of life. And of course, our biggest debates around is, how do we get access to everyone? How can I get access to people to actually teach them all these different methods of actually improving their function? So we starting an online fitness training program. There's a 6 weeks from prehab, before surgery, to post surgery, 6 weeks. We call it Core Connect, and the aim is to reclaim that the stabilizing muscles. There afterwards, which there's a few Ostomates that's probably, hopefully, they're going to get a chance to speak. They're currently in the Ostomates on the Move program, which is a 12-week functional fitness. That is, how do you prepare your body for daily activities? And then, which maybe they don't know now, but I'll tell them now, they're probably going to move over to the lifestyle athlete, which improves their functional ability to run, hike, and basically swim, and actually do anything they possibly can. And so these lifestyle athletes, the main goal over there is just to have a choice to do whatever you want to do. Yeah, next slide. And yeah, I mean, I think that's me, Faisal, and yeah.
Thank you, Ricardo. Now, at this point, Candice, if we can take the slides down, anybody that wants more information can reach out to Ricardo. His details is up on the screen, or the SASS contact details are scrolling across the screen. Reach out. We can connect you so that we can share more information. But at this point, I'd like to introduce a couple of more guests before we hand over to Lebo. The first one is Duncan. Duncan is also a biokineticist based at the Run Labs. He has been working with the group of Ostomate. We have a few of them here. Welcome, Duncan. The next one I'd like to introduce is Shahida, who is an Ostomate herself. And Shahida, Ayub, and then Iman. They have all been part of this program for, what's it, about 4.5, 5 months now? I think Iman ran away from the screen there. Oh, there she. So, yeah, I think, there's not many questions. We've got quite a few people watching, but not many questions related to this. So perhaps, if we can have the Ostomate speak to how they felt the program has helped. And then maybe we can start with Ayub. We mentioned the hernia, but the same risk for us as Ostomates is the prolapse as well. And Ayub, I know you have a story of what happened to you before your stoma became permanent and before doing this program. Would you mind sharing with us?
Yes, Faisal. Good evening, everybody. About 3 years ago, I had a temporary colostomy done because I was diagnosed with cancer, and they gave me a temporary colostomy with the view to do a ileostomy in about 6 months' time or so. And basically, everything was fine up to a point. And they also told me, please don't lift up anything, don't do any strenuous activities, please just be very careful. And one day I lifted up without thinking, I lifted up something and I could feel something give inside me. And basically, the stoma had prolapsed quite a bit. I would probably say about 4 centimeters out of the body, like. And I found the stoma people at Risk Hospital, and they told me, look, if you can still put the pouch on, just carry on with it the way it is, because in 2-3 weeks' time you're gonna have your permanent surgery anyway. So that's what happened. And since then, I've been very scared to lift things and like be too aggressive with my activities. So that's been the thing. But being here with Run Labs and with Duncan and Ricardo as well, I mean, like, just realizing that you need to prepare your body for these things, so that, because right now I can feel a change in my body, even like I've lost a few inches as well, because after the surgery, because of my Crohn's disease, I was always very thin. So I gained a lot of weight after the surgery, too much weight probably. And obviously I started losing weight doing all these functional exercises. And really, for other ostomates out there, it really is functional, because you really see a benefit in the way you move. And even, I mean, like, for us Muslims out there, I was always praying on a chair. But after this, I was able to go to the mosque and pray like a normal person, and sit and like do all my prayers in the normal way, without having to sit at the back and feel like, oh, I don't think I'll be able to get up once I'm down there. Things like that. And it's been life-changing in that way. And I feel like I'm more confident to do things. So, I mean, I'm sure the other ostomates would feel the same, especially people out there. I find that when I speak to other ostomates, it's people are very, I would say, down about things, because they feel like everything is now has to be toned down, and I can't do the things I want to do or used to do. I can't go out, I can't go run, I can't go swim, I can't do all these things. And that's what I found. But it's been life-changing.
Thanks, Ayub.
That's my bit.
Thank you so much for that. I think Iman has also got a bit of a unique perspective. When you joined, you had a temporary stoma, and about halfway through the program, you have a new stoma. So you actually can speak to the benefits of what Ricardo mentioned, sort of the prehab work, and then also how did this aid in your recovery? I think you're on mute. Oh, there we go.
Working. Okay. Yes, so I joined the Ostomate on the Move program probably 5 or 6 months after my first surgery. And so I had a temporary stoma when I first started, but it was quite early in my recovery stage as well. And I got the same spiel that Ayub mentioned of don't do anything strenuous, don't exert yourself. So I was very scared about that. But I think that the fact that I was able to be introduced to this program at such an early stage in my first recovery was very important. One in learning how to live better with the stoma and feel confident in how to do things to get a head start on that in a proactive way. And then also for my second surgery, it helped a lot in terms of my recovery stage. So when the physios had come to me after the second surgery, I was ready for them. And I felt like some of the things that they were doing was a lot of the things that I was used to already, and I felt much more confident and yeah.
And the recovery process itself, I think, if you compare first stay in hospital versus the second.
Night and day. The first recovery period was terrible because I don't think I knew what to expect. It was new on my body. I had no preparation beforehand. It was an emergency surgery, so I had been in bed for weeks beforehand. Whereas compared to the second surgery, I was actually at the Ostomates on the Move program the week before I went into surgery, so I was very active. I was in good health. And I was released after 2 days, and I was able to, although I had some wound issues that weren't really related, I was still quite my mobility was a lot more functional, and I could I was able to get back into it a lot better and quicker.
Thanks, Iman. And we're going to save the best for last year. Shahida, I think Shahida has her stoma longer than all of us on this call. Just how you found the program, and you've got your stoma how long now?
Hi everybody. I have this new life for 11 years now, and quite remarkable for me. I've been being in this program and meeting other ostomates through this program was very important for me, because for the past 10 years I've been through this alone. I haven't been in contact with other ostomates, so I couldn't share the same things which they share. And this program has helped me a lot emotionally and physically, because you just tend to move on, and the doctor said no this, no that. But with good friends, I started walking, just getting out there, getting a call, come, let's just go for a walk, let's just do this. And I did some physical activity, but not intense as I'm doing now with Duncan and Ricardo them. And yes, I'm enjoying it. And well, some days I get home and I just feel, oh, hell, I didn't do anything right. But then the motivation of Duncan, no, you guys are getting there. You're doing quite well. You're getting better. And the mere fact that he added some spice now 2 weeks ago tells me that we are improving. And yes, I think I learned a lot about my own body in this past few weeks. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Shahida. Sorry, Ricardo had to leave us. He has an appointment he can't miss. But Duncan, just a last word from you before we hand over to Lebo. You know, your experience. I know when you started working with me, you had no idea what a stoma was.
Yeah, so being a UWT student, having to go through 4 years of education, they teach us all the most common chronic diseases and conditions. And a stoma was never on the list, which I think should be, because you never know. Like, it could be the same thing how they say 1 in 10 dentists or 9 in 10 dentists recommend this toothpaste. You could have walked past an Ostomate on the street. You wouldn't know. Not everyone's bag is visible. So just getting this experience and in my internship here, yeah, let me add that note. Fresh out of uni, busy my internship, and Files was like maybe my third or fourth client I'm seeing, and I was just like, stoma. So I had to do a lot of research. There was a lot of articles you had to pay for. So me being a fresh out of uni student, didn't pay for those. So it was a lot of research, and as we moved along, it was just trying to get Faisal confident and just getting used to his body. And there's also trying to just break down those barriers that have been put in place by health professionals and maybe any other one that has assisted him along the way. So he's come a long way. We have this nickname for Faisal that he has given us. I didn't come up with it myself. The Broken Man. Yeah, anyone that has seen Faisal in person, you know his life story, and he has a lot of things. It's not just the stoma. The stoma is just the top of that cherry on the ice cream. But working with the Ostomate for the past 5 months and a bit, it's been truly eye-opening, and it's something that you would never experience on your own. And just hearing how they talk in the session, something we have, so it's an hour session. Sometimes we go a little bit over because it turns into like a share thing. I'm just there, just sitting in the back and then sharing some stories, and then just having them talk, and you can just feel that actually does help. So my role as a biokineticist is not to only treat you physically, we're trying to assist you mentally as well. And obviously I can't speak from actual experience of having a stoma myself. So that's where the support group comes in, and it's super beneficial, where they can share tips and tricks. And yeah, I use this ointment, or this is the bag that I really love. This is what I enjoy, this is what I do. And then just having them speak and go on as the months progress. So that first month, everyone was like, so they almost seemed timid. It's like, who's Duncan? What's this guy? Why are you sitting here breathing for 45 minutes at a time? So we started very simple. We kind of so busy working on like a 4-step program, where one is literally teaching you the basics. It starts as simple as breathing, and then we just switch it up and we go from position. So you're starting on horizontal level, moving into vertical level, then vertical and moving. And then it's just a whole lot of fun. And then obviously we had the additional course with Sarah Russell, physiotherapist and exercise specialist in the UK, who is an Ostomate herself, who has developed this program. So using the knowledge that I've gained over 4 years of working with Faisal, and also feeding on the research and everything that Sarah Russell has put in, I feel like we have the best way to just educate people and just tell them, like, Ostomates are allowed to lift weights. You're allowed to do your own laundry. You can do everything else. Don't have to worry about a cough, a sneeze.
Sorry to catch you there, Duncan, but I must put this in there, and it's a bit of a pat in the back. But prior my time at the Run Labs and participating in this program, I always shied away from the core exercises, the traditional core exercises, and even lifting. And when I met Duncan, when we started working, I think the heaviest I ever squatted was 40 kilograms. And about a year after starting with him, I hit a max of 110 kilograms squatting. That's 110 kilograms on the back. So it really is life changing. I know it sounds like a very mock ad right now, but I truly believe, I've seen it for myself, you've heard from fellow Ostomates over here, it really, really is life-changing. We do have to cut because we got to hand over to Lebo right now. I want to thank the Ostomates and our biokineticist Duncan and Ricardo for their time. For Kiso, says that this is honestly very educative. I'm enjoying it and learning more, better about Ostomate. And I agree without any doubt that living as explains brings all the confidence of the Ostomates that they can enjoy their normal daily activities. That's from Joseph, who's the territory manager for OMS Medical South Africa. Thank you so much for that feedback, Joseph. We really, really appreciate it. We at the time now where I'd like to welcome Lebo back onto the stage. And Lebo is going to be setting us up for our March month meeting, which is scheduled for the 28th. So please watch the space for more details. And Lebo is going to be speaking to us about intimacy with your stoma. Lebo, over to you. I think you're on mute still, Lebo. There we go. You.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lebogang Mokoni. I'm the sales manager for Convatec. I'm honored to be with you all, and thanks to Faisal and the SASS team for the invite. So there are things that are on top of every Ostomate mind. For instance, we've seen the questions coming through where they're talking about the Ostomy Supplies, and now we've had information from Ricardo talking about the exercises, because those are the questions that Ostomates usually ask themselves. Can I still exercise? What's going to happen with my supplies? But there is another topic that is always on most people's mind, but very few people are comfortable or prepared to talk about it. That is my topic for today, which is just an appetizer. Like Faisal said, you're going to hear more about it in the March meeting. So Candice, please share my script presentation. So like the presentation says, intimacy is for everyone. There's a saying that says, if birds can do it, so can everyone. So just because you are an Ostomate, it doesn't mean that you cannot have or enjoy intimacy. A lot of people don't like talking. There's a nice song that was produced by a group in 1990 called Salt and Pepper. They released a nice song called, I guess Faisal knows this song, so does most of the people here. It says, let's talk about sex. So Ostomates partners, healthcare professionals, SASS members, let's get talking. Let's talk about sex. Candice, next slide, please. So the question is, can I have an active sex life after an ostomy surgery? Yes, a big fat yes. People shy away from it because they've got a lot of questions and sometimes they don't get to talk about them. And one of the questions that they always ask is, what if I had my stoma? Or your partner says, what if I had the stoma? But remember, a stoma does not have nerve endings, which means that it does not have any feelings. You cannot hurt your partner. So that should be a relief on its own. And again, it is okay to be uncomfortable, especially initially after the operation, because your body has changed. So for some people, it is a bit uncomfortable to get naked in front of your partner. But what is going to help is if we talk about it. And remember, everybody's different. Your mental health is extremely important. Do not rush into everything unless if you are ready. Keep speaking to your partner. Communication, communication, communication. Relationships are different. For some, they might have an operation today. A few weeks later, they are comfortable, they are intimate again, and they are happy. For some, it will take a while. Just give yourself time. Do not form unrealistic expectations. Speak to your partner. Know what your partner needs. Know what your needs are. Know what your anxieties are. Because if you're not talking to your partner, you would not know what they're going through. As an ostomate, you are going to go through a lot of things, but so does your partner. So we need to take into consideration that both of you need to adjust. So the question would be, you keep telling us we need to talk, we need to talk. What do we need to talk about? So share your experiences. We had the first gentleman that told us his journey. And we've seen other ostomates telling us about their journey. Tell them, talk to them, that this is how I felt before the operation. This is how I felt during the operation, and this is where I am. Because then there won't be any questions that are not answered. And please help your partner to adjust too. So both of you needs to adjust. And for the new ostomates, it is okay, because initially when you want to get intimate, you might have questions like, what if I get a leakage? What if the ostomy appliance falls off? What if there's a smell? What if there's gas? So all those questions, please raise them with your doctor. Please raise them with your healthcare professionals. And I would advise, when you go to your appointments, please take your partner with, so that you can ask all those questions together. And a support group like SASS is very helpful. So please, let's get talking. Do not bottle things up. Like I said, do not put too much pressure on yourself. Do not set unrealistic expectations, and you'll be fine. So for someone who's single out there, might be saying, okay, Lebo, I can hear you. You are talking about people that have partners. What about me? I'm young. I still need to I would love to have children at some point. I would love to have a partner. How do I tell my partner that I'm living with an ostomy? I would admit, telling someone that you have an ostomy won't be easy, especially for somebody that you are attracted to. So find the right time to tell them. Don't rush into anything. Explain your story. And if it is meant to be, it will be. Remember, some relationships just don't work. Ostomy or not, there'll always be the right person out there for you. So don't just give up. Ostomates can enjoy intimacy like everybody else. So all we need to do is to get into the mood. Remember, initially, you might just want to hug. You might just want to talk. You might even want your partner to touch your stoma, to get that relationship with the stoma. Even name the stoma if need be. Think of it as your third wheel, and you will get to enjoy it together. And if you're using the right ostomy appliance, you empty your bag before you get intimate, there's no reason for you not to be comfortable or confident doing it. There are out there ostomy appliance or nice lingerie that you can use, or you can even make yourself one that you can use to cover your bag while you know that you want to get intimate. Again, there are things like trying to avoid food that causes gas, because then you don't want to have those gas coming out while you're doing it, because we know it's involuntary. So there are little things that we can do as ostomates to still get out there, Have a life like anybody else. Again, for ladies, we know that post-surgery, there's a possibility that you might need a personal lubricant to reduce any discomfort. Please speak to your doctor about it. And for men, there are times that you might experience short-term erectile dysfunction. It's normal. Again, with support groups, speaking to your partner, there is nothing that can stop you from having a good sex life. Intimacy does not always have to include penetration, like I said. So kissing your wife, holding and doing all that, it is also part of this. So don't shy away from it. Keep talking, and you'll hear most of the information again next month. Next slide, please. And that's our reference for Me Plus. And thank you for having me. If you've got any questions, I can answer them now. Thank you. Hi, Faisal, you on mute?
Keep forgetting to take off mute there. We're just saying we got a comment from Fia. So true. Talking helps a lot. Fia, you've been quiet. Are you back in Johannesburg or are you still in the Eastern Cape? We've got Vimbai, who is asking you to please share that reference again. Just correct me if I'm wrong, Lebo, that is on the Convatec Me Recovery.
Yes,
sorry, Me Plus.
Me Plus.
Yeah, Me Plus.
They are able to again download on the app on both Android and Apple phones, Me Plus, and it will take you to the site. So there are two sites, one for healthcare professionals and one for Ostomates.
You're welcome, Vimbai. You're so welcome. I just want to say as well, a few months ago, I was at Helen Joseph Hospital, and a young lady came up to Heather and I, and she asked the question, can I have a baby? And, the short answer is yes. But I also just want to share that if you, on Instagram, there's a young lady called Taylor Mitchell Ross. Her Ostomate handle is Ostomy and Stuff. 12 days ago, Taylor gave birth to little Noah, and she's an Ostomate. So yes, it's very, very, very possible. You did mention the erectile dysfunction for men. It is a risk for some surgeries, but there are options available. And as you mentioned, come the 28th of March, we will be having a urologist as well as a gynecologist join us, where we're going to speak a bit more in depth about intimacy and cover a lot more in terms of the topics that was there. Welcome back to Joburg. I may see you there next week. And then Fia also says, bring the Run Lab to Josie. We need it. Fia, they're going to be launching some virtual classes in the new month. So watch out on the socials. Candice, if we can please have all the speakers on again. And I think there was another question that came through. No. Yashika, does SASS get an opportunity to liaise with the public sector to ensure government facilities are adequately equipped to dispense pouches? Yashika, I think Kolo did touch on it. I think one of the biggest challenges that these healthcare facilities are facing is budgetary cuts. And if you and this is my opinion right now, my thoughts is the fact that we don't know how many Ostomates there are, the fact that we don't have a minimum standard set, means there's no real urgency placed on a budget allocation for stoma. They see it as just it's like putting a plaster on a wound. there's this mentality that's growing that one size fits all when it comes to pouches. So again, we need to complain a lot more. We need to escalate matters where we aren't getting the help that we need from these facilities, so that we can apply the necessary pressure needed, not just on the institution itself, but on the health department of South Africa, the South African Health Department, to do the necessary changes, where we can influence Treasury to increase the budget allocation specifically for stoma. I used an example a little while ago. I'm on Discovery Health, and I belong to Vitality. So I'm always greedy for my Vitality points. And once a year, you've got to go for these Vitality assessments. And part of that assessment is an HIV test that you've got to go for. Before they even prick me with a needle, I get given the option, do you need counseling? I don't know if I'm positive or negative, but the option is, do you need counseling? And we do not have the same sort of protocols in place. And what we are saying is, if you take HIV, TB, any one of the cancers, the big cancers out there, you do a Google search, you will find a treatment protocol endorsed by the Department of Health on how this illness or this disease is going to get treated. You do not find the same for stoma care. In fact, if you do a search for stoma care procedure for ostomy or stoma care procedure, you will find that number one is a Cancer Association of South Africa fact sheet. Basically, that is just what are the types of stomas out there. Number 4 on that list is SASS, and it's our survival guide. That is a guide that we put together to help ostomates and educate ostomates. So it is something that we as an organization is fighting for. But again, it is a long process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. But we need your support. And your support is raising your voices and saying that the level of care that I'm receiving is unacceptable. Lodge those complaints and escalate to either SASS or Section 27. We need to make those noise. It's not always easy to do it. It's very inconvenient to go to a compliance office. But if we want to see the change, we need to be inconvenienced a little. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, caller.
I think you're a showstopper. It's all right. Yeah. I thought it was just a showstopper. But yeah, I think it needs to be talked about. The more it's talked about, it needs to be talked about, needs to be talked about. And talked about someone. Say hello. And talk and talk and talk. We don't know. We can't hear things through the grapevine, and it's this meetings just as vital as they are for those that are watching. They're vital for us on the panel as well, because in terms of exercise, sometimes someone asks you, even though they came for the legal framework, then can I exercise, and have no idea what must say yes, no, because most public facilities do not have that option of physiotherapy, counseling, or any kind of support. You're there to collect your bags and maybe on your way you go. Yeah.
So we're hoping to change that. And one of the things we're doing is our roadshows. So if anybody that's online at the moment, that's watching, on the 11th of April, Kolo, myself, and Ricardo will be in Port Elizabeth at the Livingston Hospital. And we're bringing the show to you, so to speak. We hope to see you there. Candace, if you wouldn't mind just coming onto the screen for a brief moment. I'm sure you guys have heard Candace, change the slide. Candace, bring up the presentation. Everybody meet Candace. Candace is with Fat Finger Technology, who is our social media partners. And she's pretty much been the director in the background for this evening. So thank you very much, Candace. And then to our guests this evening, the Ostomates, Ayub, Iman, and Shahida, Duncan, Ricardo, Lebo, and Kolo. I thank you so much. Feedback we're seeing on comments coming through. People are learning, and this is what it's all about. So thank you for being part of it. Look forward to seeing you guys. Keep watching our socials, as we'll keep you updated with the next event and any other events that's coming. Thank you so much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your evenings.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.